I'd like to welcome back Neil McLean, Chairman of the Leeds City Region, and I'd also like to introduce at the end there Mark Ridgway, Managing Director of Group Roads, a manufacturing firm based in Wakefield, and one of our private sector LEP board members. So welcome, Mark. Thanks for being here today. We've got to look at this issue of city regions in a global economy. Very keen to get some questions from the audience. We talk about UK city regions becoming globally competitive, Neil, but I mean that's easier said than done in the current climate, isn't it?
Most things are easier said than done in the current climate. I think what I take from those presentations, and I have to say I had a slight shiver of fear at the start because we set our policies and strategies without the benefit of the presentations from these guys a couple of months ago. So I was just slightly concerned that they may be saying something that totally contradicted what I'd said this morning and the policies we'd set out. But I think we are very much going in the same direction. I think in terms of moving to the world stage, yes, there is a lot to be done. But if you go back to everything that was said this morning and you look at the building blocks that we have, the potential is there. And if you look at our manufacturing sector and the largest outside of London, when there is real focus and when the opportunities are understood, then they can be taken. And Mark's business is probably a perfect example of that. A business based in this region but now operating globally. And one of the things we have to help facilitate is getting the broader manufacturing and exporting base really understanding how it can be done, learning from those who have done it, and then we have to help them in terms of support to start taking advantage of those markets.
Mark, your organisation operates across the globe, operations in India, I think, and Europe. How do you obviously see things firsthand abroad? You're involved in the LEP. How do you see things panning out for the Leeds City region? How does it compete on a global basis?
Well, I think a lot of the comments that Neil's has been making regarding connectivity, and also our speakers today about connectivity, accessibility, and having a mass of engineering in this region is very, very important. I don't think there may be a perception that a lot of the policy is very, very high level, the LEP. We're very, very much focused on delivering for manufacturing companies on the ground. And in order to get companies in the local region to internationalize, there is a very, very important need to link in, A, to knowledge bases such as UKTI, to ensure, B, that we've got the infrastructure on the ground to protect that mass of engineering, because supply chains are really important. If you're going to be competitive internationally, you've got to have competitive supply chains. And we're very, very conscious of the fact that we need to have that massive engineering and a good, strong supply chain to allow us to efficiently compete abroad. But then you've got perceptual issues as well, which need to be addressed. I sit on the Advanced Engineering Sector Advisory Board to the UKTI, and our big, big drive in terms of internationalizing businesses is not just resource, critical. It's not just knowledge, how you get there, but also critical, but also perception. The ability of small, medium-sized enterprises to internationalize and their perception of that ability is just as important as the resource and the knowledge-based issues. So as a LEP, we're very, very conscious that, A, yes, we've got to address all those areas of connectivity, infrastructure, networks, and accessibility. I think accessibility was the only word I understood on Enrico's formula, which was quite complicated, but very, very key points. And unless we as a LEP are addressing those issues at ground level, then we'll be failing in the higher policy initiatives we've outlined this morning.
Great, thank you. I'm keen to bring in some questions from the audience.
Jane Lambert. I was very impressed with the presentations of both Enrique and Mike. And particularly, I was interested in the potential for growth. It seems that you're suggesting that we have to look to business to get us out of this particular trough. Business growth, and that's going to be export growth. And that, as far as I can understand your argument, is going to be for new markets in the BRICS states, Brazil, Russia, India, China. But what do you actually think this region has a competitive advantage in, which you can actually sell in substantial quantities to actually get us out of this rut, to those particular markets? We've traditionally been looking towards Europe. Well, the OECD countries, in fact, we've been looking to Europe and North America, and they are in as big a recession as we are.
Thanks, Jane. Mike?
That's a really good question. I mean, the first thing I would say, of course, is that In representing the Chambers of Commerce, we are, of course, we do not favour, one sector over another, given the broad nature of our membership base. But what I would say, actually, a research project that I'm working on at the moment is really around trying to identify some of the barriers to trade for companies that haven't yet entered international markets. So these are companies that are kind of on the cusp, if you like, of exporting. And what's really interesting is, whatever sector they're from, whether it's professional services, which is, of course, a big player in the Leeds City area, or whether we're talking about manufacturing, or whether we're talking about distribution, it's the same issues that keep coming up again and again. And it's issues to do with the local economic environment. And if you think about it, the vast majority of companies, both in the wider UK economy and in this area, are either sole traders, they're small or medium-sized enterprises. And for them, their local business environment is their local economy. So many of the barriers are going to exist at that level. And those barriers are going to include, do I have access to the right skills? I need certain managerial capabilities to be able to take on a new market. Can I get that in my local area? There may be logistical issues, logistical challenges. Again, they're going to be local as well as national. So I would always come back to the same thing, which is that really it's about the local business environment and getting the basics right in terms of skills, in terms of transport, accessibility, as Enrique said.
Great. Thanks, Neil.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to one of the things we picked up this morning, I mean, there are some very clearly identified high growth areas from this city region. And this is not exclusive, but by way of example, biosciences, healthcare, meditech, as I would call it, digital and creative media, advanced manufacturing. When you actually analyse what is here, we literally have some world-leading companies. And we're not just talking about major, large companies in economic terms. There are a whole raft of areas where we are pretty much at the front of the markets. And we need to help those markets grow and extend. And if you look at some of our more traditional industries, textiles in this area, their market has changed. The businesses that are really succeeding have realised that trying to compete necessarily at high volume levels, high volume, low cost, much of that market has gone for very well-known reasons. But if you adapt and change, as many of them have, into the higher and more advanced ends of their productions, then the quality of what can be delivered from this region is immense. And yes, we have to help some of those businesses, industries grow, but what we've then got to do is help them grow internationally. Again, the building blocks are here, and Mark, I'm sure, will comment from a really hands-on perspective. The opportunities are there, the skills are here. We now have to match the two together.
Yep, I may just develop on that point. I think it's very important not only to look at what you're doing now and saying how can I take that abroad, but seeing what the market requires and seeing how you can actually adjust your offering to that marketplace. 10 years ago, we just manufactured metal forming machinery. Today, we're in 5 different sectors, but our core competency was designing and developing special application machinery for a great variety of sectors. We're now one of only 3 in the world developing what's called superplastic forming diffusion bonding equipment for the aerospace industry. So only 3 of us.
Could you just repeat that more slowly?
Sorry, it's called superplastic forming and diffusion bonding. It's basically allows...
That could have gone on Enrique's formula, I think.
It allows aircraft manufacturers to make stronger, lighter weight aircraft. So all the fan blades on Rolls-Royce jet engines, the front engines, they're hollow. That's done by superplastic forming titanium into hollow, strong structures. We're working with Lockheed Martin on the F-35, with British Aerospace on the front wing, the canard wing, the foreplane of the Eurofighter. A great variety of civilian and military aircraft applications for strong, lightweight structures. But because they're stronger, because they're lighter weight, use less fuel, less carbon emissions. So there's an environmental application there as well. But we saw the market changing, and I think it's very much a matter of knowing how the market's changing, also knowing the experience you have in certain sectors and how that can be applied. I mean, we talked about the textile industry. Neil was just talking about that. If you look at the pharmaceutical industry in Switzerland, that came after the dye industry because they had a certain technology there which they then applied into a completely different sector. And whilst not wanting to generalize too much, and I know for small, medium-sized enterprises, resource is a key issue, it is very much looking at the market, seeing how that market's changing, and seeing how you can alter your offering to the marketplace to ensure you've got that differential on the international stage. And that's when the networks which the LEP is trying to develop for small, medium-sized enterprises, such as the links, as we mentioned earlier, to UKTI, but also the MAS as well, who is bidding for new funding at this moment in time. These are all structures we want to put in place and make sure they are available to a wider audience to access those, and also understand how the market's changing and perhaps get them connected with organizations that get them to that market and show how the world is changing. Because I think, you know, if you want to stand still, you've got to run fast. If you want to be somewhere else, you've got to run even faster. I'm paraphrasing Alice in Wonderland there. But you do need to be running fast in order to keep up with the market as it changes around you, because what we're doing today is no longer good enough for what the market wants tomorrow.
Thanks, Mark. Anything you